I heard them whisper through the thin walls again. "She won't remember by morning," my daughter-in-law said, her tone light as air. "Just smile and nod." They thought I was asleep. They always think that. But I've learned to keep my eyes half closed, my breathing steady. In this house, silence is survival. My name is Joanne Miller, but they just call me Grandma Jo now, like it's a nickname for a ghost. Since Henry died, this house has felt more like a waiting room than a home. My son Mark moved me here last spring into what he called the garden suite. Pretty name for a converted storage room that smells faintly of bleach and lemon cleaner. I used to teach English at the high school for 33 years. Now they correct my words. "It's dementia, Mom," Mark says gently when I forget where the sugar lives. But the sugar isn't missing. It's been moved. I notice things like that. The pattern of small rearrangements, the disappearance of my checkbook, the sudden new passwords on my laptop, all of it hidden under the soft language of care. It started the week after my birthday. 69 candles, a store-bought cake, a toast to fresh beginnings. Then came the pills. "Just vitamins," Lily said. 2 white capsules with breakfast, 1 blue tablet at bedtime. After 3 days, I couldn't remember if I'd watered the ferns. After a week, I was sleeping through mornings I used to love. Sunlight felt too bright, voices too sharp. "She's declining faster than we thought," Lily whispered one afternoon, unaware I was standing in the hallway. "It's time we talked about long-term care." Long-term care. Those words hang in the air like a lock clicking shut. I should have broken then, cried or pleaded. But Henry used to say, "Joe, never give them your tears before you understand the fight." So I waited. I pretended confusion. I let the fog settle just long enough to see who moved inside it. That's when I started noticing the paper trail. Mark's hushed phone calls, Lily's new gold bracelet, the envelopes from the bank that never reached my hands, and the sharpest detail of all, the way they spoke about me as if I were already gone. "Once the paperwork clears," Lily said one evening, "we'll finally have breathing room." Paperwork. Breathing room. My husband's house worth almost $800,000. My pension. My savings. I'd spent a lifetime teaching others to read between the lines, but I never thought I'd have to use that lesson on my own son. The morning I stopped taking the pills was the morning I started remembering clearly again. I flushed them down the sink, then smiled through breakfast. "Feeling better, Mom?" Mark asked. "Much," I said. He didn't notice the change. Not yet. That gave me time. Time to write, time to plan, time to hide the old recorder Henry had once used for his choir practices inside my knitting basket. I pressed record the next afternoon. Lily's voice filled the room later that night when I listened back. "The realtor says she'll list as is. We'll tell Mom it's just an appraisal." My hands shook. Not from age, but fury. I'd buried my husband, nursed him through cancer, built this home from paychecks and patience, and now my own family was plotting to sell it out from under me. Still, I didn't confront them. Not yet. Rage without proof is just noise. I needed evidence and a plan, so I played the part. The forgetful old woman in the soft cardigan, the one who couldn't manage her phone or her memories. I baked cookies for their open house meetings, smiled when the lawyer visited to help with estate matters, and signed nothing. They thought my signature trembled because of arthritis. In truth, I trembled from holding back. Each night, I wrote in my notebook names, dates, phrases, the color of Lily's new car, the realtor's business card she left on the counter. Confidential appraisal, Joanne Miller Estate. Estate. They'd already declared me dead on paper. That was the moment something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to the nursing home. I wasn't going anywhere. This house held the echo of Henry's laughter, the marks on the wall where Mark grew tall enough to lie about it. If they wanted to take it, they'd have to do it in daylight, with the world watching. And maybe, just maybe, I'd let them try. The next morning, I dressed early. Light blue dress, pearls Henry had given me our first Christmas. I made tea, set 2 cups, as if expecting company. Then I called the bank. "This is Mrs. Joanne Miller," I said, clear and calm. "I need to review recent activity on my joint account." There was a pause, the kind that feels heavy with truth. "Of course, Mrs. Miller," the woman said, "but your son's financial manager already initiated a transfer last week." My heart stuttered once, then steadied. "A transfer?" "Yes, ma'am, to a holding account under Miller Family Trust, signed by your representative." Representative. That word again. Like a thief wearing a name tag. I thanked her sweetly, hung up, and walked to the window. Outside, Mark's car gleamed in the driveway. He was home early, smiling, carrying a folder thick with papers. Lily followed, her perfume floating ahead of her like a warning. They came in cheerful, pretending warmth. "Mom, we have some updates," Mark said. I smiled back. "So do I." He didn't notice the little red light blinking beneath the lace tablecloth, the recorder catching every word, every lie, every promise. Lily sat across from me, tapping her nails against the folder. "It's just routine," she said. "We need your signature for insurance adjustments." "Of course," I replied, lifting the pen with steady fingers. "But tell me first, what happens after I sign?" She laughed softly. "Nothing you need to worry about." That's when I realized worry was exactly what she feared in me. A mind that still worked. A memory that still held names. A mother who refused to fade quietly. I signed one paper, not theirs but mine, folded in my notebook that said simply, "If anything happens to me, call attorney Margaret Hayes, file number 784C. By sunset, I had enough on tape to light their perfect little plan on fire. I didn't know then how far they'd go, or how close I'd come to losing everything before the truth broke open. But as I locked my door that night, one thought burned steady beneath my calm. They thought they were writing my ending. They had no idea I'd already started a new chapter. I woke to the sound of birds outside my window and the smell of burnt toast. For a moment, I almost believed everything was normal again. That Henry was still downstairs, cursing the toaster and whistling off-key. But when I opened my eyes, the silence pressed down like a second blanket. My son's car was already gone. Lily's perfume still lingered in the kitchen, sweet and heavy like guilt. On the table sat the folder they'd tried to make me sign. "Important documents," it said in neat black print. I made myself a cup of tea before I opened it. People think old women tremble because of age. Truth is, sometimes you just need both hands free for fury. Inside were 3 pages. The first was a health directive, authorizing my care coordinator to make medical decisions if I became incapacitated. The second, a financial management authorization, gave Mark access to my accounts. The third page, the one tucked behind the others like a secret, was a property transfer. If I signed, my house would become part of the Miller Family Trust. Their names on the line marked trustees, mine on former owner. Former owner. The words sat on the page like tombstones. I set the papers aside and took a sip of tea that had gone cold. Then I opened my notebook, the one where I'd begun to document everything. The blue ink looked faint against the paper, but each line was sharp in my mind. June 12th, Lily brings pills labeled vitamins. Taste bitter. June 18th, Mark finds unpaid bills. Says I'm forgetting. June 26th, lawyer visit. Folder marked estate. July 1st, phone call. Transfer initiated. Dates tell a story if you line them up right. 30 years teaching essays taught me that. The truth always hides in sequence, not sentiment. I knew I needed help, but not the kind my son had in mind. So I called someone who still remembered me as more than an aging burden, Rebecca Owens. She'd been my colleague back when I still ran the English department. After retirement, she worked part-time for an elder rights attorney. When she answered, her voice cracked with surprise. "Joe, it's been years." "Rebecca, I'm afraid this isn't a social call," I said. I think someone's trying to erase me from my own life." She didn't laugh. That's how I knew she understood. "Come by the office this afternoon," she said quietly, "and bring every document you've got." I left the house without telling anyone. That felt wrong, like sneaking out of a life that was supposed to be mine. But as I drove Henry's old Buick, I realized something. You can't sneak out of a prison when the locks are politeness and pity. You just open the door and walk. Rebecca's office was above a dry cleaner on Main Street, the same town I'd lived in for 40 years, though lately it felt foreign, smaller somehow. I handed her the folder and my notes. She read every page twice, lips pressed together. "This is serious," she said finally. "If they're moving money and property without consent, that's fraud, and possibly elder coercion." The words felt heavy, official. Fraud. Coercion. My son's name floating beneath them like a bruise. Rebecca glanced at me over her glasses. "Do you have proof of their intentions?" I opened my purse and placed the small recorder on her desk. "I might." We listened together. Lily's voice filled the room, smooth and confident. "Once the appraisal's through, we'll get her settled. Shady Pines said they have a room available after the 15th. Rebecca rewound it. Listening again. "That's enough for a preliminary report," she said. "Joe, we can build a case, but we'll need financial records, the transfers, any missing checks." "I can get them," I said. She gave me a look I recognized from our teaching days. It was the same look she used when a student promised to study, and she knew they actually would. "Be careful," she said softly. "People get desperate when money's involved." When I got home, Mark's car was back in the driveway. He was sitting in the living room scrolling his phone. "Mom, where were you?" "Book club," I lied easily. Years of grading essays had made me a practiced liar of convenience. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You should let me know next time you go out alone. Lily worries." "About what?" He hesitated. "About your memory." "You've been a little forgetful lately." I felt my heart kick against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. "If I ever forget you, Mark, trust me. I'll notice." That night, after they went upstairs, I went through the desk drawers in Henry's study. Most were empty, but in the bottom one, I found what I didn't know I was looking for: a copy of the bank statement from last month. 2 withdrawals, each just under $10,000, both authorized by M. Miller. The next morning, I called Rebecca again. "They're moving the money," I told her. "Do you have the statement?" "I do." "Good," she said. "Then keep acting like you don't know a thing." So I did. For the next week, I played my part to perfection. I let Lily drive me to appointments I didn't need, smiled when Mark called me sweetheart, in that careful tone you use for toddlers. But inside, I was memorizing everything. The way Lily locked my pills in a cabinet, the calls she made from the back porch, the realtor's number she scribbled on a napkin. One afternoon, I heard her say it plainly through the open kitchen window. "The buyer's confirmed. We close in September." September, my birthday month. I almost laughed at the poetry of it. That night, I wrote one more note in my book. Let them think they've won. People reveal their hands when they believe the game's over. By mid-July, the air grew thick and mean. Mark avoided eye contact. Lily spoke to me like I was a guest overstaying my welcome. When she finally said the words, they landed like a slap I'd been expecting. "Mom, we've decided it's time. There's a place called Shady Pines. It's lovely. They have activities, a garden, a piano. You'll love it." I folded my hands in my lap. "When do we go?" Her face brightened, relieved. "Oh, thank God. I thought you'd resist." "I just want what's best for you both," I said. And for once, that was true. That night, when they went to bed, I packed quietly. Not clothes, not jewelry, just my notebook, my recorder, the bank statement, and the key to the safe deposit box Henry and I had opened years ago. He'd always said, "Keep one thing the world can't touch." Inside was the original deed to the house and a letter he'd written before he passed. "Joe," it said in his slanted handwriting, "if you're reading this, something's gone wrong. Remember, people forget stories, but paper remembers everything." The next morning, I slipped out before dawn and drove to the bank. I wasn't leaving forever, just long enough to make sure the next move was mine. Rebecca met me at the back door of her office with a thermos of coffee and a promise. "We'll file tomorrow," she said, "but Joe, they'll come looking for you." I smiled, tired but certain. "Good, let them. I've got something for them to find." That evening, I returned home just before sunset. The house glowed gold through the trees. My house, my life. I walked inside, placed the deed on the table, and waited. Lily came down first, startled. "Where have you been? We were worried sick." "Oh, I was just out getting something notarized," I said softly. "What?" Before I could answer, Mark came in, face pale. "Mom, what did you do?" I held up the folded document. "Just a little homework assignment," I said. "Do you remember what I used to tell my students, Mark? Never hand in work you didn't write yourself." He opened his mouth to speak, but I wasn't done. "By the way, there's someone you should expect a call from tomorrow. Her name's Rebecca Owens. She works for Attorney Hayes. I told her you'd be delighted to explain all those bank withdrawals." Lily's face drained of color. You went to a lawyer?" "Oh, several," I said. "You taught me the importance of having representation." The silence that followed was delicious, thick, frightened. Mark finally whispered, "Mom, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said. "And if you're wondering whether I recorded that conversation about selling my house, yes, I did. Every word." Lily took a step back. Mark sank onto the sofa like the air had left him. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't the frail old woman waiting to be erased. I was the storyteller again. And this was finally my story to tell. What none of us knew then was that by the end of that week, someone would call from the realtor's office with news that would turn everything upside down. Because the house they thought they'd sold, it wasn't theirs to sell anymore. You can tell when a lie starts to crumble. It doesn't collapse all at once. It splinters. Little cracks appear in the smiles, in the tone of a good morning, in how long they hold your gaze before looking away. By Friday morning, the air in that house was full of cracks. Mark barely spoke to me at breakfast. Lily's cheer had curdled into something sharp. She moved through the kitchen like a restless cat, clinking dishes louder than necessary. "So," she said finally, forcing a laugh that didn't reach her eyes, "you've been busy with lawyers lately, Mom." "Just sorting things out," I said. "Paperwork never ends, does it?" She gave me a long look, calculating. "You don't need to worry about all that legal stuff. We've got it handled." "Oh, I'm sure you do," I said. "That's why I like second opinions." Her spoon slipped into the sink with a clang. She left the room without another word. Good, I thought. Let them stew. Fear was a better teacher than guilt ever was. At 10 o'clock sharp, the phone rang. I already knew who it was, the realtor. I let it ring once, twice, then answered with a calm I didn't quite feel. "Mrs. Miller, this is Dana with Evergreen Realty. I'm calling about the Maple Street property." "Yes?" "Well," she hesitated. "I wanted to confirm. The listing has been withdrawn?" My heart gave a little leap. "Withdrawn? That's what your attorney's office informed us this morning. We received notice that the property's been reassigned to a private trust under your sole ownership, effective immediately." There it was. Rebecca had done it. The papers Henry and I had hidden all those years ago, the original deed, had given her the leverage to shut the whole thing down. "I see," I said, pretending mild surprise. "Thank you for letting me know." When I hung up, I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. For the first time in months, I felt steady, anchored. They couldn't sell what they didn't own. An hour later, Mark came storming in, phone clutched in his hand. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" I looked up from my crossword. "Language, dear." The realtor called. They said you revoked the listing." "Oh, did I?" I smiled sweetly. "Imagine that. Do you even know what you've done? You've made us look like idiots. We had buyers lined up." "Buyers for my house," I said quietly. He froze, color rising in his face. "We're your family, Mom. We were trying to take care of you." "By taking everything I own?" His voice cracked. "It's not like that." "Then explain it to me like I'm 5, I said. "What's it like exactly?" He didn't answer. He just turned away, rubbing the back of his neck the way he did as a boy when he'd been caught lying about homework. Lily appeared in the doorway, arms folded. "This isn't fair, Joanne. You're twisting things." "Am I?" I leaned forward. "I have your voice on tape discussing a sale. The lawyer, the appraisal, the room at Shady Pines, all of it." "Shall I play it?" She went pale. You recorded us." "I did. That's illegal." I smiled. "Actually, it's not. One-party consent in this state. I taught civics too, remember?" For a long moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the tick of the old kitchen clock. Then Lily's eyes changed. Something cold flickered there. "You think you've won, but you haven't. You're old, Joe. You can't keep up with everything forever." "Maybe not," I said softly, "but I only need to keep up long enough." She didn't ask what that meant. Maybe she already knew. That evening, Rebecca called. "Joe, I've filed for an injunction. They can't touch your accounts or property until a court review. But be careful. They might retaliate." "I'll be fine," I said. "They're cowards. They only fight when they think no one's watching." "Still," Rebecca warned, "keep your doors locked." I did. Every bolt, every window latch. But locks don't protect you from what lives under the same roof. That night, I heard them whispering again, sharper this time, Mark's voice low and angry. "She's losing it, Lily. We can't keep doing this." Lily's reply came quick. "She's playing you, Mark. If we push for guardianship, we can control everything. She won't even see it coming." Guardianship. The word sent a chill through me. I'd read about those cases, families declaring their parents incompetent, taking legal control. It was the final erasure. The next morning, I went into defense mode. I photocopied everything: deed, bank statement, my notes, and stashed copies at Rebecca's office and in the safe deposit box. Then I called Dr. Howard, my longtime physician. "I need a cognitive evaluation," I told him. "Today." He chuckled. "Joe, I've been your doctor for 20 years. You don't need that." "I do," I said, "because my son thinks otherwise." By noon, I had a clean bill of mental health signed and notarized. I slipped it into an envelope marked, "For court, if needed." Henry would have been proud. When I came home, the house felt wrong again, too still. My bedroom door was open, the drawers half closed, my notebook gone. I stood there for a long time, pulse hammering. Then I noticed the faint smell of Lily's perfume, vanilla and ambition. They'd found it. My notes, the recordings, everything. But they didn't know I'd already made copies. Still, I had to play dumb. When Mark came home that evening, I said quietly, "Someone's been in my room." He didn't even flinch. "You probably misplaced something." "No," I said. "Someone took my notebook." He sighed like a man carrying too much. "Mom, maybe it's time we talked about moving you somewhere safe." "There it is," I said softly. The line rehearsed to sound like love. He blinked, confused. "What?" "Never mind. Dinner's in the oven." That night, as they slept, I sat in the kitchen under the yellow light and wrote in a new notebook. My hands hurt, but my mind was clear. "They'll try to make me look weak," I wrote. "They'll say I'm sick, but the truth has teeth. Let them bite it." The next morning, Rebecca called again, her voice urgent. "Joe, we have a problem. The realtor reached out. Someone tried to relist the house under a new entity, Miller Home Holdings, LLC. My stomach dropped. "They're not giving up." "No," she said, "but neither are we. The county recorder's office flagged it. They can't file anything without your signature now. You're protected, but it means they're desperate. Be on guard. Desperate. That word stayed with me all day. Desperate people don't think straight, and that's when they're most dangerous. By evening, I heard the first crack in Mark's voice. He came into the kitchen, eyes rimmed red. "Mom," he said quietly, "why are you doing this? We're family." "Family doesn't steal," I said. "I'm not stealing. I wanted to make things easier. Lily said we could—" "Lily said," I interrupted. "When did you stop thinking for yourself?" He looked at me like he wanted to speak, then shook his head and walked out. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames. Later that night, I heard Lily pacing upstairs. She was on the phone. "She's making me look like a monster, Mark," she hissed. "If she ruins this deal, I swear I'll—" Her voice cut off. Footsteps. Silence. Then the faint creak of the stairs. I slipped my hand toward the drawer where I kept Henry's old flashlight. The beam cut through the dark hallway like a blade. Lily froze halfway down the steps, phone still in hand. "Oh," she said, forcing a smile. "Didn't mean to scare you, Joe, just getting water." "Then why are you wearing your coat?" I asked. Her face twitched. She didn't answer. I watched her turn and walk back upstairs. When her door closed, I finally let my hand stop shaking. I turned off the flashlight and whispered to the empty room, "You're not the first to underestimate me, dear, but you'll be the last." The next morning brought an envelope under my door. No return address, just my name in block letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Notice of petition for guardianship, filed by Mark and Lily Miller, hearing set for August 21st. I sat on the edge of the bed, the paper trembling in my hand. They were really doing it, trying to have me declared incompetent. But what they didn't know was that I'd already prepared my own surprise for that very date. Because if they wanted a courtroom, I'd give them one, along with witnesses, documents, and every recording of their greed laid bare for the judge to hear. I smoothed the paper, folded it neatly, and placed it beside the deed. Then I whispered to the empty house, "All right, Henry, curtains up." The morning of the hearing, the sky hung low and gray like it knew what was coming. I stood at the mirror, fastening my pearl earrings, the ones Henry had bought me on our 10th anniversary. And for a moment, I saw her. The woman I used to be. The teacher with chalk dust on her sleeves, the wife who hosted Sunday dinners, the mother who believed her boy could do no wrong. That woman was gone. But in her place stood someone sharper, steadier, someone who had nothing left to lose but her name. And she wasn't giving that up without a fight. Rebecca picked me up at 8. She'd insisted on driving. "Judges respect punctuality," she said, though I could see she was worried. I wasn't fragile, but she treated me like porcelain anyway. In the car, she briefed me again. "They'll try to paint you as confused, Joe. Answer calmly. Keep your temper. And whatever you do, don't interrupt." "Rebecca," I said, fastening my seatbelt, "I've handled 17-year-olds who thought Shakespeare was a rapper. I can handle my son." She laughed, but there was sadness behind it. The courthouse smelled of old paper and disinfectant. We found our seats, me on one side, Mark and Lily on the other. They looked polished, rehearsed. Lily wore her hair in that perfect loop she used for her influencer photos. Mark's suit was too expensive for a man drowning in debt. They didn't look like family, they looked like a team. When the clerk called our case, I stood. The judge was a woman around my age. Sharp eyes, no nonsense. That gave me hope. "Petitioners, you may proceed," the judge said. Their lawyer, a slick young man with a silver tie, rose first. "Your Honor, this case concerns the mental decline of Mrs. Joanne Miller, age 71, whose recent erratic behavior and financial decisions suggest diminished capacity. My clients, her son and daughter-in-law, seek limited guardianship to ensure her safety and proper management of her assets." He made it sound so reasonable, like taking a person's life away could ever be reasonable. He called Lily first. She spoke with a trembling voice, eyes glistening on cue. "We love her, Your Honor, but she's been so confused lately. She forgets things, misplaces documents, accuses us of terrible things. We only want what's best for her." "Do you have examples?" the judge asked. "She left the stove on twice," Lily said. "She gets lost driving. Sometimes she calls the same person 3 times in one day and doesn't remember." Every lie like a pebble thrown at glass. I could feel it cracking around me and I wanted to shout, but I didn't. I just folded my hands and waited. Mark took the stand next. He looked everywhere but at me. "It's been hard," he said. "Mom's not herself anymore. We tried to get her help, but she refuses. She's paranoid. She thinks we're stealing from her." "Are you?" the judge asked, her tone flat. He stammered. "Of course not." When it was my turn, I walked to the stand without Rebecca's help. The clerk swore me in. I could feel every eye in that room waiting for the trembling, confused old woman they'd described. I smiled. "Good morning, Your Honor." She nodded. "Mrs. Miller, can you tell the court your understanding of this hearing?" "Yes," I said. "My son and his wife are attempting to gain control of my finances and property by claiming I'm unfit. I'm here to prove I'm not." A murmur rippled through the room. I saw Lily's jaw tighten. The lawyer leaned forward. "Mrs. Miller, have you ever been diagnosed with a cognitive disorder?" "No." "Are you currently taking any medication that might impair judgment?" "No." "Do you sometimes forget—" "Everyone forgets things," I interrupted, then smiled at the judge. "Even lawyers." Rebecca shot me a warning glance, but the judge hid a smirk. Then came the question they'd been waiting for. "Mrs. Miller, have you recently contacted an attorney regarding your assets?" "I have," I said. "Multiple, in fact. Would you like to see the paperwork?" I handed the clerk a folder. Inside, the notarized deed showing sole ownership, the bank statement with the fraudulent withdrawals, and the letter from Dr. Howard verifying full cognitive capacity. Lily's lawyer flipped through the pages, his expression changing with each one. The judge frowned. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, this shows 2 withdrawals from your mother's account, both authorized by you. Care to explain?" Lily jumped in. "It was a misunderstanding. We were helping her manage expenses." I interrupted softly. "Helping yourselves, you mean?" The lawyer tried to object, but the judge raised a hand. "Sit down, counsel. I'd like to hear this recording Mrs. Miller provided." Rebecca pressed play on the small recorder. My living room filled the courtroom. Lily's voice bright and casual. "Once the appraisal's through, we'll get her settled. Shady Pines said they have a room available after the 15th. Then Mark's. She won't even notice once she's moved." Silence. Real silence. The kind that feels like everyone's holding their breath. Mark looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw fear. Not because of the law, but because for the first time he understood I wasn't broken. The judge leaned back. "Mrs. Miller, I don't see evidence of incapacity here. Quite the opposite. I see a woman who's been remarkably thorough in documenting her circumstances." Rebecca squeezed my hand under the table. The judge turned to Mark and Lily. "I strongly advise you to withdraw this petition before I forward this evidence for investigation. Financial exploitation of an elder is a serious crime," their lawyer whispered frantically. Lily's hands shook. Mark's shoulders slumped. "Withdrawn," the lawyer said finally, his voice small. The judge nodded. "Good choice." She turned back to me. "Mrs. Miller, I recommend you consider a restraining order. You have every right." "Thank you, Your Honor," I said quietly. "But I think the distance they'll feel after today will be punishment enough." The gavel came down once, sharp and clean. Outside the courthouse, the air smelled of rain and freedom. Rebecca hugged me tight. "You did it, Joe. You won." "Did I?" I said. "Winning feels a lot like losing sometimes, because as much as I'd fought for my house, I'd lost my son in the process." That night, the house was still again, too still. I made tea for one. sat at the kitchen table and stared at the photo of Henry and Mark fishing when Mark was 10. Back then, they'd both looked so proud of the same catch. I thought about calling him, apologizing maybe. But then I remembered Lily's voice on that recording, the calm cruelty in it, and the thought died before it reached the phone. Just after midnight, a knock rattled the door. I froze. No one visited at that hour. I looked through the peephole. A shadow stood on the porch, rain dripping from a hood. For a second, I thought it was Mark, until I heard the voice. "Mrs. Miller? I'm Officer Delgado. We need to speak with you." My stomach tightened. About what? He removed his hat. "It's your son and daughter-in-law, ma'am. There's been an incident." The world seemed to tilt. What kind of incident? He hesitated. "A car accident. Out on Route 9, they didn't make it." For a moment, the words didn't reach me. I just stared at him, the sound of rain filling the space between us. "I see," I said finally. "Thank you for telling me." When he left, I stood in the doorway listening to the storm. I felt nothing. No tears, no relief. Just a strange, hollow ache. As if the universe had handed me justice and punishment in the same breath. The next morning, the house was silent again. But this time, it didn't feel like a waiting room. It felt like an ending. Or maybe the start of something else. Because a week later, a letter arrived addressed to Joanne Miller, sole proprietor of 14 Maple Street. Inside was a single sentence from the attorney's office. "We've received an offer from a buyer you might want to meet, someone who says she's always admired the garden." And for the first time in months, I smiled, because whoever that buyer was, they weren't coming to take. They were coming to remember. The letter sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I opened it again. It wasn't fear that stopped me. It was exhaustion. After everything that had happened, the lies, the hearing, the accident, I was hollowed out. You spend a lifetime teaching your heart to love unconditionally, and then one day it asks, what's left to love? When I finally slit the envelope, the paper inside trembled in my hand. The offer wasn't from a bank or a realtor. It was written in tidy handwriting on cream stationery. "Mrs. Miller, my name is Claire Raymond. I grew up 3 houses down from you. My mother used to bring me by your garden to see the tulips you planted each spring. I'm looking for a place with a soul, a home that remembers kindness. If you're ever willing to sell, I'd love to speak with you personally. Sincerely, Claire. A home that remembers kindness." I read that line over and over until the words blurred. Kindness. That was what this house used to mean. Henry's laughter in the kitchen, Mark's muddy shoes by the door, the clatter of dinner plates and piano lessons and ordinary life. But the house felt different now, like it was holding its breath, waiting for permission to exhale. I folded the letter neatly and tucked it into my notebook. I wasn't ready to sell, but the thought of someone wanting this place for the right reasons warmed me. That afternoon, I went outside for the first time in weeks. The garden had gone wild, weeds climbing over the fence, roses drooping under the weight of neglect. I knelt to pull one free and found myself whispering, "Sorry, Henry, I let it go." But the earth forgives faster than people do. Within an hour, my hands were dirt-streaked and steady again. The rhythm of pruning and watering settled something inside me. That's when I saw her. A young woman, maybe early 30s, standing by the gate. She wore a yellow raincoat and held a small notebook. "Mrs. Miller," she called softly, "I hope this isn't a bad time." It took me a moment to recognize the name. Claire. She looked nervous, like she'd stepped into sacred ground. "I'm sorry to drop by unannounced," she said. "I wasn't sure if you'd received my letter." "I did," I said, brushing the dirt from my gloves. "You've grown since I last saw you. You used to pick my marigolds." Her face lit up. "You remember that?" "Of course. You gave half of them to your mother and the other half to your dog." She laughed, a clear, genuine laugh, the kind that feels like sunlight. I hadn't heard one of those in this yard for a long time. We talked for nearly an hour among the rose bushes. She told me about her job at the local library, how she'd moved back after her divorce, how she missed the way the town used to feel before every old house became an Airbnb. "I've been looking for somewhere permanent," she said. "Somewhere that feels lived in. My realtor showed me a dozen places, but none of them felt like this." I studied her face. Open, hopeful. The kind of hope that doesn't expect miracles, just honesty. "I'm not sure I'm ready to sell," I said, "but I'd like to show you something." Inside, I led her to Henry's study, the one room Mark and Lily never touched. The air still smelled faintly of tobacco and old books. "These are his journals," I said, pointing to the shelf. "He wrote everything down. Weather patterns, garden notes, grocery lists, things that made him laugh. He used to say a house is just a diary you live inside." Claire ran her fingers over the spines, reverent. "It feels like he's still here." "He is," I said quietly, "in the soil, in the creaky stairs, in every stubborn weed that refuses to die." She turned to me. "If you ever decide to let this house go, I promise I'll keep it the way it is." I smiled, but my throat tightened. "That's kind of you, dear. But it's not about keeping it the way it is. It's about remembering why it was built." After she left, I sat in the living room long after the sun went down. The shadows stretched long across the floor, the same way they used to when Mark was little and playing with his toy trains. I thought about what the officer had said. They didn't make it, and for the first time, I let the grief in. I cried, not for what they'd done, but for what could never be repaired, for the boy who once kissed my cheek with jelly on his lips and said, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll always take care of you." Some promises die young. When the tears finally stopped, I looked around at the empty house. It didn't feel angry anymore, just tired. The next morning, I called Rebecca. "I think I'm ready to sell," I said. "Are you sure?" she asked gently. "Yes, but on my terms." We drew up the documents that afternoon. I refused to list it through an agency. If it left my hands, it would go directly to someone who'd love it. I thought of Claire's quiet sincerity and felt something unclench in my chest. 2 weeks later, she came back with her checkbook, nervous and grateful. The sale went through without fanfare, just a handshake and a promise to keep the tulips blooming. On closing day, she hugged me. "I'll take good care of it, Mrs. Miller." "I know you will," I said. "Just remember to talk to the house once in a while. It listens." She laughed through tears. "I will." That night, I stood on the porch for the last time. The air smelled of cut grass and rain. I locked the door, slipped the key into Claire's mailbox, and walked down the path Henry built with his own hands. I didn't look back. Some goodbyes don't need witnesses. I rented a small apartment above Main Street close to the library. Rebecca insisted on helping me move, but I did most of it myself. At 71, independence tastes sweeter than any sympathy. Every morning, I walked past my old house on my way to the bakery. The new curtains were open. Flowers bloomed in the window box. I sometimes saw Claire kneeling in the dirt, humming to herself as she pulled weeds, and once I heard her whisper, "All right, Henry, how'd you get crabgrass here again?" I smiled all the way home, but peace, I learned, never stays still for long. A month after the sale, a letter arrived at my apartment. The envelope was plain, no return address. Inside was a single line typed in black ink. "You think it's over, Joe? You're wrong." No signature, no clue. Just those 9 words sitting heavy on the page. My hands went cold. I read it again, slower this time. The voice in my head didn't sound like Mark or Lily. It sounded like someone else, someone who still had something to lose. I folded the paper, set it on the table beside my tea, and whispered to the empty room, "Well then, looks like the story isn't finished after all." The letter stayed on my kitchen table for a full day before I touched it again. the edges curled from the humidity. Black ink bleeding just a little where my teacup had rested too close. I should have been frightened. An anonymous note like that would shake anyone. But what I felt wasn't fear. It was fatigue laced with curiosity. Who still wanted something from me? Mark and Lily were gone, buried under rain-soaked earth and unspoken apologies. There were no debts, no lawsuits. The house was sold, the papers sealed. But cruelty has a way of echoing long after the mouths that spoke it are gone. That night, I dreamed of the garden again. Not the wild mess I'd left behind, but the one Henry planted our first spring here. Tulips, marigolds, a single row of lavender that perfumed the whole street. In the dream, someone was standing by the fence, their face hidden by light. "You forgot something," they whispered. I woke before dawn, heart pounding. The letter lay where I'd left it. The apartment felt too still, too watchful. By breakfast, I'd convinced myself it was nothing, a prank. Maybe one of those scammers who comb through estate records looking for widows with something left to steal. But then the second letter came, slid under my door while I was at the market. "You don't deserve peace, Joe. You stole what wasn't yours." No signature again. But this one smelled faintly of something, lilac perfume. A scent I hadn't encountered since the hearing. Lily's perfume. For a moment, my knees went weak. I told myself it couldn't be. But memory is a cruel mirror. The same sweet, powdery note I used to smell on her sweaters, on the pillows after she'd napped in my living room. Someone had found that perfume, or someone wanted me to think they had. I called Rebecca immediately. She arrived in 20 minutes, no coat, hair still damp. "Let me see it," she said, and read both letters twice. "Could be a copycat," she murmured. "The court documents made news, remember? The paper called you the grandmother who outsmarted her heirs. People read things like that." She meant to reassure me, but I could see the lines around her mouth tighten. "We'll have the police collect them," she said. "Don't answer the door to anyone you don't know." I promised, but I lied. That night, I sat in the dark by the window, lamp off, a cup of cold tea at my elbow. The streetlight outside flickered over the wet pavement. A shape moved near the alley. Quick, uncertain. For a heartbeat, I saw the flash of blonde hair under a hood. A woman's outline. Then it was gone. I told myself I imagined it. Until 3 nights later, I found muddy footprints on my back stairs. Small, narrow, unmistakably female. I didn't call Rebecca this time. I called Claire. "Mrs. Miller, is everything all right?" she asked, breathless, like she'd run to the phone. "Could you come by after work?" I asked. "Bring that big dog of yours." She laughed softly. "Rufus? He'd love that." She arrived just after sunset, rain dripping from her coat, the dog trotting beside her. We sat in my tiny kitchen, the dog's head resting on my knee while I told her everything. The notes, the perfume, the footprints. Claire's expression hardened in a way I hadn't seen before. "Do you think it's someone from before?" "I don't know," I said, "but whoever it is wants me afraid." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then let's give them something else instead." The plan was simple. She'd stay the night. If anyone came, we'd call the police. But hours passed and nothing happened. Around midnight, the wind picked up. Rain lashed the windows. I almost laughed. 71 years old, playing detective in my nightgown. Then Rufus growled. A soft sound came from the hallway and the squeak of the back door. Claire grabbed her phone. I whispered, "Wait." I flicked on the light. The door stood open, rain sweeping across the floor, and there, frozen in the doorway, was a woman. Drenched, trembling, eyes wide with something between terror and shame. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "Lily?" She looked ghostly pale, hair plastered to her face. "You thought I was dead," she whispered. "You wanted me dead." I gripped the edge of the table. "They said you both died in that crash." "They said a lot of things," she spat. "Mark's gone. I wasn't even in the car. I left him that night. He was drunk, shouting about you, about the money, about everything we lost. Her voice cracked. I got out before the bridge. He didn't. The room swayed. Claire had already stepped between us, phone raised. You need to leave, she said. But Lily's eyes were on me. You took everything, Joe. You made me out to be a monster. Do you know what it's like being alive when everyone thinks you're not? Yes, I said quietly. Every day you lived in my house, you made me feel the same way. Something broke in her then. The fight drained out, replaced by a kind of bewildered grief. She sank onto the floor, sobbing. Rufus edged closer, uncertain. I just wanted a life that wasn't small, she said. You had everything, the house, the respect. Mark wanted your approval more than he ever wanted me. And so you tried to take it, I said. She looked up, rain mixing with tears. We were wrong. I was wrong. Claire's voice softened. Lily, the police are on their way. If you're telling the truth, you can explain everything to them. Lily didn't resist when they came. She just sat quietly, wrists shaking as they cuffed her. Before they let her out, she looked back at me once. He died thinking you hated him, she whispered. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say that could rewrite the past. After they left, Claire and I cleaned up the water, silence heavy between us. At last she said, You okay? I nodded. I think so. It's strange. You fight so hard to be heard, and when the world finally listens, all you want is quiet. The next morning, Rebecca called. The police confirmed Lily's identity. She'd survived under a false name, drifting from town to town. The letters were hers, confessions wrapped in threats. For weeks afterward, I waited for relief, for closure. It never really came. Grief doesn't end. It just changes shape. But something else bloomed in its place. Stillness, maybe even peace. Claire visited often. We started volunteering at the library together, reading to children on Thursdays. I'd watch their faces light up and think, this is what inheritance should look like. Stories that survive us. One evening, as we locked up, she said, You know, Henry was right. Houses are diaries. You just had to turn the last page. I smiled. Maybe. But I think I'm finally ready to write a new one. That night, I walked home slowly under the streetlights. The air smelled of lilacs again, not from perfume this time, but from the garden outside my old house, blooming wild and full in the dark. I stopped at the gate, closed my eyes, and whispered, All right, Henry, I kept my promise. The house remembers kindness again. And for the first time in a long, long while, I felt like I belonged to the world again, not as someone's burden or victory, but simply as Granny Jo, a woman who had lived, lost, and told her story all the way to the end. The rain began to fall, soft and forgiving, washing the last of the past from the air.